Here's a map of our network. Keep in mind, this is only a demo network set up to show the stealth, containment, and Overwatch capabilities of Shepherd. You can see two Windows clients, Windows 11A and Windows 11B, here on our network. Users of 11A only use a website hosted on this Ubuntu web server. The web server queries two databases running Windows Server 2022 and a Linux MySQL server to serve content to two different web pages. The webmaster's SSH from the web server to the Linux MySQL server. Users on the Windows 11B use that web server as well. They also use Remote Desktop, which is also hosted on the Windows server. We also have an Nmap scanner PC that lets us see what ports are open on every host. I'm going to switch to the scanner right now, and we're going to run a scan of our network under traditional configuration settings. And while that's running, here are the IP addresses of each of the hosts on the network so that you don't have to keep track of which one is which. So our Nmap has come back, and we're going to look at the ports for each of these devices. So this is our C3 server, which has two open ports as expected. This is our web server with SSH and web open. Here is our Linux MySQL box with SSH and MySQL. Here is our Windows server, which has SQL Server as well as Remote Desktop and a bunch of normal Windows stuff open. And here are our two Windows 11 clients that have typical Windows ports open. So that's a traditional network. And we'll go over to each of the devices to show that our connection to the web servers, web server pages, all function. So we're going to refresh each of these pages. And you can see that this is the one connected to the Windows one, and you can see here's today's date and time that shows that we just refreshed it. And you can see the data differs slightly between the two. Apparently, the Linux people only like action, whereas the Windows users tend to have a different array of interests. And you can see that happens on the other box here as well. So there's normal operations in our demonstration network. So, oh, and from our box here, we will also show Remote Desktop. Going to our Windows Server box. So here we have our Windows Server Remote Desktop, and we'll start our Notepad file right here, just so that when we reconnect to this session later, we'll know that this was the session that we left. Today is what, 7 December 2023? Cool. So I'll close but not end the session. And then what we'll do is we'll switch gears. As you'll recall, this is our traditional network right here. We'll go to the next slide, which shows what that same network looks like when reconfigured to run Shepherd. And as you'll recall with Shepherd, incoming traffic is blocked by each of the device's respective firewalls, which are set to block all incoming traffic. Outbound traffic, however, is not blocked, which allows the Shepherd clients to talk with the Shepherd server and thereby allow communication between devices over those established outbound channels. what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to each of our devices and I'm going to enable their firewalls so they block all incoming traffic. Okay, so we've enabled the firewall on each of these devices. They are running Shepherd connections in the background. So what we're going to do now is we're going to rescan the network using the same settings as before. And while that's going on, I'll remind you that each of these devices have a single channel setup, a single tunnel setup for each of the different services that they want to talk with another device on. And each of those are being adjudicated by the Shepherd server. And that server only has 2 open ports. It can be open to the internet. It can be internal only. It could be in the cloud. It could be wherever you need it to be. And shortly, we'll have our scan here complete. So 2 ports open on our C3 server, nothing on, here's our IP list, nothing on our web server, nothing on our MySQL server, nothing on Windows server or SQL server or RDP, nothing on Windows 11A or Windows 11B. So these devices, while they exist on the network, there's nothing there for an attacker to gain a foothold on. There are no open ports, nothing is listening, but we still have full functionality. And you go, okay, well, that's cool that we still have it, but what happens when someone gets in? Because there's going to be a breach. The attack, like life in Jurassic Park, the attacker always finds a way. Cool. So what happens when there is a breach? Well, as it turns out, our Windows 11B box right here happens to have NotPetya on it. And as you'll recall, NotPetya is a bit of ransomware that spread itself widely across the world and caused billions of dollars of damages. And while that particular piece of malware is easily detected by today's anti-malware solutions, it is representative of ransomware in general. So let's have a look at what happens in a Shepherd network versus a traditional network. Under a traditional network, since each of these Windows devices were able to talk with each other, here's our traditional network. This Windows box could talk with this Windows box, and this Windows box could talk with that Windows box, and all back and forth. NotPetya would scan the network. It would find all these Windows hosts, it would infect them, and it would destroy them. Every Windows box that was communicable would act as an infection agent in spreading the ransomware across the network. In a NotPetya network, or excuse me, in a Shepherd network, the channel only exists for specific ports for specific protocols, which then makes it so that attacks like this are contained. So let me show you that in action. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to run NotPetya. I will deploy it on the network and I will let it do its thing. I will let it attack the entire network. What I have right here is sysinternal's TCP view. It is currently watching for all instances of run DLL, which is how NotPetya deploys itself. It's watching for run DLL doing anything on the network. Right now, obviously, there's nothing happening. So we're just doing some checks to make sure that we're good to go. So last sanity check. Okay, last chance before we deploy NotPetya. Here we go. And firing. This will run for about a minute, and then it will nuke this box. You can see here how it has actually started scanning networks to say, hey, who's out there? What ports do we have available? It's checking Windows, RPC, and file share ports to be able to say, hey, what's out there? What can I do? How can I spread myself? And as you'd expect, it's not going to find anything because everything is blocked. No one is listening to anything. Everything is dark from NotPetya's point of view. But things are still working. I still have connectivity to my remote desktop here. I still have the ability to conduct all of my normal operations, despite the fact that I have malware rampaging or attempting to rampage across the network. It's not going to find anything. It's not going to be able to latch onto anything. It's going to fail. So we give it about a minute, and you'll watch this VM fall over and die. While that's happening, we're going to go ahead and do an indicators of compromise check for NotPetya. Nothing on this Windows box, and nothing on this Windows box. But here is our Windows 11 bead device that has just been ransomwared and will not be coming back. One more time, we'll go ahead and we'll check for indicators of compromise. Nothing on this device. Nothing on this device. If you didn't know, NotPetya drops a .dat file in the C Windows folder, and it creates a scheduled task that is unnamed. And so this script just goes and it looks for those particular indicators of compromise. In this case, this VM is dead. The only way to recover it is to go back to a previous snapshot. But as you can see, instead of the entire network getting rampaged and destroyed, at least the Windows hosts, by this particular piece of malware, only the initially infected device was compromised, and that infection, that destruction was limited only to that host. So it took what would have been an enterprise level catastrophe. It is now a help desk ticket. So we've talked about stealth, we've talked about containment, and now lastly, I want to show you Overwatch. So as you can see, we've got connections here on the Shepherd C3 dashboard. This is what the administrators get to see, where it sees which users are there, who's doing what groups they are members of, what roles they have, what hosts they have access to, and what's currently going on live. So I even have the ability to go in here and to kill live sessions. If I don't want someone to have a particular session up and running, cool, I can make it die. I can also go back and I can watch stuff from the past. I can watch it live. I can see RDP and SSH sessions as they're going on live. And as you saw, I can kill them in real time. This is what happened from before, as you'll recall. So that concludes our demonstration of how Shepherd is able to provide stealth, containment, and overwatch to protect your network, your IP, your machines, your time, and your resources.